1 KGB officer, 4,000 documents, 0 gunfights. He exposed the Soviet Union's entire spy network for stealing Western technology, and the CIA responded by secretly feeding Moscow broken chips, rigged software, and sabotaged blueprints. The Soviets built it into their own factories with their own hands. This is Vladimir Vetrov, the spy who quietly helped destroy the Soviet Union. Vladimir Vetrov was not a rebel. He was not a dissident. He was a mid-level KGB officer working inside Directorate T, a secretive branch tasked with one job: stealing Western science and technology and feeding it back to Soviet industry and the military. For decades, this directorate, known in the West as Line X, had quietly stripped Western labs, universities, and defense contractors of their secrets: computer chips, aviation designs, radar systems. The Soviet Union's entire technological backbone leaned on stolen blueprints. Vetrov knew this system intimately. He'd served abroad, recruited assets, and understood exactly how deep the theft went. But by the early 1980s, Vetrov was bitter, passed over for promotions, resentful of his superiors, drinking heavily. Depending on which account you believe, his motivations were part disillusionment with the corruption he saw in the KGB, and part personal grievance and anger. Whatever the reason, in 1981, he made contact with French intelligence, the DST, and offered to become their source inside the KGB. The French gave him a code name: Farewell. Over the following months, Vetrov handed his French handler roughly 4,000 documents. Not just gossip, hard, verifiable intelligence. The identities of Line X officers stationed in embassies around the world. The specific list of technologies the USSR had stolen or was actively trying to steal. An internal structure of the KGB's entire technology theft operation. This became known as the Farewell Dossier, arguably one of the most damaging intelligence leaks in Soviet history. France, unsure what to do with material this explosive, made a decision that would change the shape of the late Cold War. They shared it directly with the United States. President Reagan was reportedly briefed personally, and what the CIA chose to do next wasn't just about catching spies. Here's where the story turned from espionage into something almost cinematic. Instead of simply shutting down the Line X network, a CIA official reportedly named Gus Weiss proposed something far more devious. Let the Soviets keep stealing. Just make sure what they stole was broken. Through the very channels the KGB had used for years, the West allegedly began feeding the Soviets deliberately flawed technology. Software with hidden bugs, computer chips with built-in defects, turbine and pipeline designs engineered to fail. According to some Cold War accounts, one of the most dramatic results was a huge explosion on a Soviet gas pipeline in Siberia in 1982, reportedly caused by sabotaged pipeline control software the Soviets had stolen and trusted completely. Now, it's worth being honest here. This pipeline explosion claim comes largely from one CIA official's later account, and several historians have pushed back on it, questioning whether it happened exactly as described. So take the more cinematic details with a grain of salt, but the broader sabotage campaign and the technology theft exploited are well documented. What's less disputed is the bigger picture. Western nations used Vetrov's intelligence to roll up dozens of Line X operatives across multiple countries, expelling Soviet intelligence officers en masse and crippling a technology theft pipeline the USSR had relied on for years. This wasn't just an embarrassing spy scandal. It struck at something structural. The Soviet economy, especially by the early 1980s, was already straining under massive military spending, an inefficient command economy, and a technological gap of the West that was only growing. Stolen Western technology had been one of the quiet crutches propping up Soviet industry and defense research. Take that crutch away, and feed the system unreliable sabotage replacements, and you accelerate a decline that was already underway. To be clear, Vetrov didn't single-handedly collapse the USSR. The Soviet Union's fall in 1991 came from a tangle of causes: economic stagnation, the war in Afghanistan, Gorbachev's reforms, nationalist movements, and more. But the Farewell Dossier is a genuine, well-documented thread in that larger unraveling. One quiet, paper-based wound among many that hears the twist nobody saw coming. Vetrov wasn't caught because of counterintelligence work. He wasn't hunted down by a mole hunter. In 1982, in a fit of jealous rage, Vetrov attacked his mistress and a colleague in a parked car, killing the colleague and seriously wounding the woman. He was arrested by Soviet police for crime itself, with no idea at first that his espionage would ever be discovered. But while he sat in prison for the murder, KGB investigators going through his belongings found letters that exposed his years of spying for France. The case unraveled from there. Vetrov was tried for treason, and in 1985, he was executed. He never saw the fallout of what he'd started. The sabotage operations, the mass expulsions of Soviet officers, or the small crack he'd helped put in the foundation of an empire. Vetrov's story is strained precisely because it isn't a clean hero's tale. He wasn't a principled dissident risking his life for freedom. He was an angry, flawed man whose personal resentments happened to align with one of the most consequential intelligence operations of the Cold War. And that's what makes it such a compelling piece of history. It's a reminder that some of the biggest geopolitical shifts didn't come from grand ideological battles. They came from paperwork, quiet betrayals, and one bitter man's decision to talk. So the next time someone tells you empires fall because of armies and tanks, remember Vladimir Vetrov. Sometimes, all it takes is a folder of documents and the right person willing to hand it over. If you enjoyed this deep dive into Cold War espionage, hit subscribe. There are dozens more stories like this one waiting.